Yes, I'm afraid today's video is going to be a little bit more on the negative side. We're looking at some of the most disappointing albums of this decade so far. So basically, I'm just going to run down albums that I expected more from. That's the criteria here. It's not that artists who are already artists that I didn't like put out an album that I didn't like. There's no expectation there. There's no disappointment that comes with that. It's albums that I just felt could have been so much more than they were. You know how it is. You know the feeling. It happens every year. It happens multiple times a year. And given that we've, had 5 years of music, I thought today would make for an interesting video and highlight some albums that have come out this decade that I personally had a hunch for, had expectations for, and they sadly didn't live up. But before we get into the list, I want to make sure you guys share your own list down in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this list that's about to come through as well. There's no particular order here. You can order yours if you want, but I'm just going to run down albums that I personally found disappointing. There's no ranking. There's no real one more disappointment than another here. It's just albums that I wanted to mention. And yeah, make sure as well you subscribe, like the video, share it around. If you're really feeling generous, you can support me over on the membership page. You can support me on Patreon, either or. That would be wonderful. You get perks that come along with it as well. So consider that, especially if you've been around for a while and you like what I do. And yeah, share the video around too. Enjoy. Don't get too upset. Let's go. Starting off with the album that inspired this entire video's existence. Music by Playboi Carti. Yeah, this album only came out a couple of weeks ago, and I've only been able to sit through it a couple of times because that first listen was so painful for me on many ways that I couldn't even stand still, but I couldn't even fathom having to sit through it again. And I did sit through it again, and it was just as equally as hard to sit through the first time, honestly. Yeah, the reason why it's painful is because I actually really like Playboi Carti. Like, I do. He is an artist I do genuinely like. He took a while for me to be accustomed to. I know a lot of people felt that way about Carti when he first came around. Everyone hated it, and then everyone kind of just slowly came around. Particularly when Die Lit came out. I think that was the one that got more people on board. And yeah, that first mixtape, Die Lit, are excellent to me. They're regular plays. They're really great, mindless trap music that I can kind of switch my brain off to and just kind of bob along to. There's no, extra layers of detail going on there. I think most Carti fans would agree, but there is something really addictive about his sound. He started to lose me a little bit with Whole Lotta Red, but you can't argue the influence that has had on the 2020s with, Destroy Lonely, Ken Carson, and many others coming through, Net Spend with that kind of rage sound. For sure, you can't really take that away from Carti, but I was starting to worry that the sound was losing it. But now we get to music, and yeah, this was built up for like 5 friggin' years, man. The hype, the way he kept rolling it out and then ditching it and then teasing and then being like, no, it's not really coming out. I knew it was never going to live up because of the way he was doing it, because it had to be near flawless to justify and excuse the ridiculousness that came along with this album. And even though it was never going to be that, I thought it would be better than what it was. I just can't do it, man. It sounds like brain rot music to me. Like, I hate saying that term because it sounds like a TikTok comment, but seriously, it sounds like brain rot music. His voice, the way it's gargling, sounds awful. I've hated that deep voice thing he's been trying to do for a few years now. It hasn't landed at all for me. A lot of the features are carrying the tracks as well. I mean, Kendrick Lamar, who I have some reservations about being on this album in the first place, by the way, but even he is like making me tune in and interested more than listening to Carti on his own song. And Kendrick Lamar should never even fit on an instrumental like the ones that he does. Like, that's how ridiculously bad this album is. Like, genuinely so bad. I actually didn't mind the whole Swampizzo producer tag thing that kept popping up, which people seem to hate. I kind of like the kind of like early Waka Flocka prime, Flockavelli days vibes that came through on that, but ultimately not much else can be compared to Flockavelli other than that. Like, no, that's leagues above this. And yeah, the repetition, The way the album just goes on for frigging ever. It does not need to be this long. Everything about it, man, just sucks. Like, I couldn't fathom what was going on. There was no interesting tracks to me. It all just melded together. It was all mushy. It was all ugh. Yeah. The best review I saw was from my friend on Rating Music, Kankato, and he perfectly put it. This album made me wonder how I was ever a fan of Playboi Carti in the first place. That is the perfect review. It makes me question why I even listened to him. That's how this album is. So disappointing, man. Next, we have perhaps a slight divisive one, but I'm not sure what you'll think. Lorde's Solar Power. Now, the reviews initially were pretty weak for this album, but over time it seems like a lot of her fan base has come round to what she was going for on this. Unfortunately, I'm not one of those fans, but I will say this. I don't think I was ever the biggest Lorde fan. Like, I really like Lorde. I think she's really talented. I think Pure Heroine and Melodrama are very, very good albums, but I'm not like a super fan of Lorde. I don't think either of those albums are like absolute masterpieces or anything like that. I think they're very good, so maybe I was never going to be somebody that would come around on this in the end. But yeah, that kind of like laid back, beachy vibe, the, you know, California vibe, and the lyrics that are quite satirical throughout, I just didn't think landed very well. I don't think she sells the whole thing too well. I like albums that are satirical. I like albums that, you know, go for that kind of like, you know, haha, you can sort of see what the joke is if you pay enough attention to with the lyrics, you know, like an Alex Cameron, Geordie Greep. Like, there are albums that do that very well, but I don't think this album really sold that at all. Like, I think if you weren't really told otherwise, you probably wouldn't even pick up on that. But even besides that, the music itself just is too backgroundy for me. Like, sure, I guess in the right environment, if I was just, you know, having a cocktail by the beach, or, you know, in a sunny country having a good time, maybe it could fit the vibe. But otherwise, I just think there was more to her sound than this. I think there was more to her as an artist than this album. Like, even the biggest Lorde fan can surely accept that this isn't touching the first two albums, right? Like, is it? I don't think so. This one still to this day does make me sad, and it has only been about a year now, but still, Future and Metro Boomin's We Don't Trust You just didn't land at all, man. It really didn't land. I still find this album confusing, because these two coming together are like absolute demons, genuinely demons. You know, I've ranked my favorite Future and Metro Boomin tracks before, because there's just that many brilliant ones. You know, they were an unstoppable duo in the 2010s, and whenever they came together, it was always in contention for being the best song on the whole album. And yet they come together for 2 whole albums in the space of a month, and like, both of them are just like, yeah, cool, sure, but nothing special. Metro kind of feels like he's not really giving us the best beats. There isn't really one standout beat other than Like That to me. Like, and that was very much like an igniting of flames between 2 rappers. You know, it was made for that purpose. It still is a fantastic song. I still play it regularly. I think it's brilliant. But yeah, the whole point of that song was just the flash in the pan. Let's cook something up and create something insane here. And it's almost like they needed that to kind of bring the spark. But otherwise, they're just coasting on general styles that they've been doing already. I don't know. You just look at something like a Radical from Monster, you know, the title track as well, and look at how, you know, detailed and layered the production is. And, you know, Future is giving us so many different styles of flows. It's just so many dynamics, and this album just didn't have it. The features weren't that great either. I felt like the features were kind of, again, coasting a little bit, just giving us stuff that we've heard before. Future giving us stuff we have heard before. Metro, like, the whole thing just felt too familiar. Such a letdown. I know I still feel like a bit in the minority with that, because some people were putting it on their year-end lists, but nah, not for me. Nah. I think this one could potentially go down badly, and I know there's some commenters who love this album, because again, when I put out my review, this did not go down well at all. But Beach House, Once Twice Melody, man, you know, I love me some Beach House. One of my favorite duos of all time. Teen Dream, Possibly one of my favourite albums ever generally. I absolutely love Bloom as well. I love a lot of tracks across all their albums, and this included, so don't get me wrong, Once Twice Melody does have some fantastic songs on it. But the whole thing just felt like, I don't know, just didn't grab me. Felt like a lot of it just was, again, a little bit like Lorde, kind of backgroundy, didn't really stand out. The melodies weren't really quite there. I think it felt like it could have been a lot shorter too. I can see why they went for something like this, and, you know, the album had, you know, different stages and different like chapters and things, and it did go on for quite a while, so it was purposeful. It wasn't just like piling on songs for the sake of it, like Playboi Carti's album. I'm not comparing the two or anything like that, but yeah, for me, I just think for an album this long, I needed more to grab me. For their sleepy kind of ambient feel that they have in their music, I think you need a lot more to really lure me in to go on for this long, and it just didn't cut for me. It didn't touch the best of their work. Yeah, I do think the later years, in fairness to Beach House, has been weaker than the earlier years. You know, I don't think, you know, like Thank Your Lucky Stars or Seven were particular highlights in their discography, but I still have high expectations each time they drop, and this for me just didn't live up. Going for one of the big guns next, and I honestly could have picked a few albums from this artist, but I'm going to go with Midnights from Taylor Swift. And the reason why I'm mentioning Taylor Swift here is because I actually do think she's good. I know some people absolutely have this, like, about Taylor Swift. Like, she just has this way, somehow, of making people absolutely angry. And she's the worst thing to ever happen to me. And it's like, just stop. You're just being ridiculous. She is good. There is talent there. There is good songs there. There are good albums there, right? And coming off the back of Folklore, particularly, Evermore, okay, could be a bit of a letdown because I didn't think that was very good, but I could at least appreciate that she was sticking to that folky sound, and it was something different for her career. And Folklore was genuinely one of her best albums. Some really well written songs. The production was the best we're ever really going to hear from Desna and Jack Antonoff coming together with Taylor, which at this point is just like, they need to stop now. Like, she needs some new collaborators because it's just ran out of gas completely. But that was like the peak of what they could do, for sure. And coming off the back of that, and you get Midnights, and the way she like gaslit us, I'm sorry to use that word, but she did. The way she promoted it as if like all these songs were going to be these like high concepts about how, you know, you kept up late at night, you kept up past midnight every night, and these are the things that keep you up. And then you listen to the album and it's just like literally not that. Like, Karma is literally not that. Like, no, just don't even lie to us. This album was not that at all. Like, and it's just like really like cheap synthy pop songs. Again, I'm not against that. I'm all for synth pop, but I just think that the production, as I've already said, they'd run out of gas by this point. The production feels really flat. There's not really many great melodies. The writing is really, really weak. It gets worse on Tortured Poets, but, you know, at that point, it was just like, okay, Taylor is just dropping whatever now for her fans. Like, yeah, Midnight should have been more of an exciting ride for me. The big hit Anti-Hero, I still don't like that song, even though I've heard that song a million times. It never grew on me. I think Lavender Haze is one of her best. I'll hold that still. I think Lavender Haze is very, very good. I think the production on that song really stands out. It's very crisp. But the rest of the album for me, nah, didn't live up. Also, just adding on to it as well, because I didn't mention this, but I do want to mention it with Taylor Swift. The reason why I think she lands on a list like this particularly is that when you're also the biggest artist in the world by quite a margin, there are some massive names in the music industry, obviously. You know, you've got Bruno Mars, you've got The Weeknd, you got, you know, Lady Gaga, who's had a great couple of years now. You know, there's lots of massive names, Ariana Grande, Billie Eilish. Like, still, I don't think any of them are really quite on the level of a Taylor Swift. So she's quite easily like the top of the top. And I just think there's an expectation that comes with that, man. Like, when you're that big, I still think you should be dropping really, really good albums. And I just think Midnights for me is a disappointment, just because, again, like, she is so big. She's so unstoppable. The quality needs to match that. That's how I feel. Next, we're going to mention an affiliate of Taylor Swift, particularly Phoebe Bridgers, who's more of an affiliate, but her and her gang, Boygenius, who not the massivest fans of them individually. I think Julian Baker's definitely the best of the three. I like Phoebe Bridgers' lots of individual tracks by her, and to be honest, I just don't really like Lucy Dacus. I'll be honest, I don't think Lucy Dacus is good, I'll be honest, but the other two I think there's talent there, right? For sure. Not to hate on Lucy, but I don't see it. I just don't see it. But as a three, I think them coming together in this kind of indie supergroup way, I expect a little bit more. And they did give us Not Strong Enough, which is a fantastic song. Genuinely fantastic song. It made my year-end list. And the rest of the album, apart from that, what was it, $10 I think it's called? Yeah, it just kind of went in one ear, out the other. It was really kind of like slow and sluggish, and their vocals aren't really striking enough to pull it off either. Like, they're not the greatest vocalists. They kind of all rest on similar kind of tones. And it just ended up really being, for lack of a better word, pretty boring. Like, it just ended up being pretty boring. And I just think, yeah, there needed to be more oomph to it. And yeah, I just expected a little bit more extra with that. I want to mention Japanese Breakfast, who again has very recently dropped. So, you know, we're kind of talking basically about a week-ish at this point of recording, and I may be premature putting it on here because who knows, it could grow on me one day, but I do just want to point out that Jubilee album from 2021 was excellent, man. I loved it. It still is holding up so well. The production style was so varied, so sweet at times as well, like so lovely and wholesome in places. And to wait 4 years and get this new one, I have to call it a disappointment, man, because this just doesn't stand out at all. Like, again, kind of what I was saying with Boygenius, I do think, you know, Jay Brecky is actually a really good singer and would be definitely, you know, better than the other singers from Boygenius for me personally. But you wouldn't think it with this album. She's kind of just like, fine. There's no great melodies standing out like there were on Jubilee. The production at times is really lovely, but it's not like enough to wash me away and absolutely sweep me off my feet. It just all kind of sounds a bit so-so. I don't know, man. I just thought this one was pretty disappointing. And finally, we're going to end off with Idols. And to be honest with you, I'm not even going to name an album. Just the entire 2020's output from Idols has been a stink fest. That track with LCD Soundsystem was unacceptable. I don't know what the hell they were doing there, but you know, it's still not even been that great beyond that track either. Like, yeah, just the entire run they've been on has been so mediocre, so lackluster, and the way they started things off in the late 2010s with those first two albums being genuinely really good, like punky, post-punk, rocky albums. Like, there was a lot of style going on there. The lyrics had a lot lot going for it as well. You know, Joy had all those kind of satirical tracks, which I've been talking about a little bit in this video as well. Like, yeah, it was really fun. There was a lot of character. And then as soon as they hit the 2020s, it all just fell away. And I do not know what went wrong here, but the production just is kind of mushy and muddy now. The vocals seem to be getting worse with each album. The songs just don't have as much bite to them. Everything just kind of feels like really generic. Like, I don't really feel like I'm hearing anything that I couldn't get from other post-punk bands out there. I could list a lot if you want, but yeah, I don't see what they're offering now. And it's sad, really. It's sad. I think they had a lot going for them initially, but they've just fizzled out, and yeah, they've just become pretty much a big disappointment. And that is it from me. Thank you for watching as always. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. You got some interesting choices coming from me here. If you agree, disagree, let me know in the comments. Do subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what your picks would be as well. And yeah, don't hate me too much. This is just my opinion, of course. If you're feeling really generous, you can support me over on the Patreon or the membership page. That would be wonderful. Yeah, that's going to be it from me today. Have a good day and goodbye.